All right, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Kiddushin Daf Chaf Tes. For those of you who are familiar with the Daf Chaf Tes, this is parts of it belong to my profession, the classical chiyuvim of bris milah, and maybe more broadly, we should really just pick up at the Mishnah, which is the mitzvos ha'av ala ben, mitzvos haben ala av, and famously the halachos that surround a woman's p'tur for mitzvos aseh she'azman grama, but still a chiyuv, and all losa says. Let's get through the Mishnah together, a quarter of the way down, about 15 lines or so down, 12 lines down on Chaf Tes Amud Aleph. Kol mitzvos haben al ha'av. We don't know what these are yet. Anashim chayavim v'nashim p'turos. A man will be obligated in them, and a woman will be exempt. And we'll analyze today in the Gemara what type of mitzvos that's referring to. V'chol mitzvos ha'av ala ben, echad anashim ve'echad nashim chayavim. V'chol mitzvos aseh she'azman grama, anything that's time-bound. Anashim chayavim v'nashim p'turos. Men are obligated in time-bound commandments. Women are exempt from time-bound commandments. And then the Gemara adds, V'chol mitzvos aseh shelo azman grama. If you have a commandment that isn't time-bound, the mitzvah that applies around the clock. So then says the Gemara, echad ha'anashim ve'echad hanashim chayavin. Both men and women are obligated. V'chol mitzvahs lo saseh. For any mitzvah that is a negative prohibition, you're fine, you're good. V'chol mitzvahs lo saseh, bein she'azman grama, bein she'lo azman grama. Whether or not it's time bound, if it's a mitzvah, lo saseh, echad ha'anashim ve'echad hanashim chayavin, with a couple of exceptions. One that we learned about in the previous Masechta, chutz mibal takif ubal tashchis, that a woman doesn't have an isser of shaving her head, and uval tatame lemesim, that a female kohen doesn't have the isser. It's not time bound. We don't. But the Gemara says over here that she doesn't have that chiyuv in regards to becoming tamei. She's allowed to become tamei. So asks the Gemara, what was the first case of the Mishnah? A third of the way down. Our first case in the Mishnah was mitzvos haben al ha'av. My kol mitzvos haben al ha'av. Ilema kol mitzvos demechayev bara leme'ebed la'ava. If you're talking about the mitzvos that a son is obligated to perform for a father, why would we say nashim peturos? Let's look, for example, at one mitzvah, the mitzvah of yira. The Tanya, the Brisa writes, ish imo ve'aviv tiro, ish ein li elo ish. Ish aminayin, ksho omer ish imo ve'aviv tiro, hare kan shnayim. We see that the mitzvah saseh of a child toward his parents applies to both. I have a mitzvah to fear and respect my mother, and I have a mitzvah to fear and respect my father. They're separate people, and they both have a similar chiyuv. So it can't be that the mitzvahs haben al ha'av are talking about things that the child is obligated toward the parent. Therefore, Amar Rav Yehuda hachi kamar kol mitzvahs haben hamutalos al ha'av la'asos libno. It's a bit of a backwards language, but any mitzvah that a father is obligated to perform on behalf of his child or for or to his child, depending on what we're talking about, anashim chayav, and that's when men have a chiyuv, and nashim peturos, and women are exempt. And taninu lahadatan rabbanim, we have a brisa in line with this idea as well, that a father is obligated in taking care of his son in a certain set of ways that a woman has no obligation in whatsoever. Says the Gemara a little bit more than halfway down. He's obligated in the following mitzvahs for his son. Lamulo, to circumcise his son. Belief doso. If the child is a bechor, he has to do the mitzvah of pidyon haben. Ulalamdo Torah. He's obligated to teach his child Torah. We're going to discuss some practicalities of that today. Ulahasio isha. We're going to discuss some practicalities of this as well, about ages at which it's appropriate to marry off a child. Ulalamdo umnus. We have to teach our child a trade. V'yesh omrim avla shito b'mayim, to teach our child to swim. All of that is the Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol she'ena malamed es beno umnos malamdo listos. He comments and says, anyone who doesn't teach their child to trade, it's as if they teach them to be a criminal. Says the Gemara, listos sal kadaitach. You think their kid's actually going to walk around being a criminal? Ela ki'ilu malamdo listos. Of course, it doesn't make him a definite criminal, but it's as if you've taught him to be a criminal because you've taught him nothing. Now he's going to have to go figure it out. What? Might be profitable, yes. Might be. I don't know what kind of. If you're asking that question, it alarms me about the chinuch in your home. Listen, sweetheart, I understand you want to be a doctor, but the bar to be a thief is much lower and more profitable. So let's go. A lot less school.
If you become a doctor, the amount that you can steal is even more.
Wow. The way you think is not the way everybody else thinks, Tex. This 50th birthday is getting to your head, So says the Gemara, no, it's ki'ilu malam tifos. Obviously, it just means if you don't set someone up for success, they're more likely to fail. Lamulo bina, I did a bris this morning, and I'm like, by the way, this the day of your son's bris. What?
An answer.
Oh, Okay, hold on. Let's talk about it after.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I said to the family today, the day of your son's bris is the tzivui of the commandment of a father circumcising a child. So I asked the father to appoint me as his messenger based on today's Gemara. Our Gemara doesn't talk about shlichus. Our Gemara just says that the tzivui is on the father. How do we know that there's a commandment to circumcise a child? That Abraham was told to circumcise his son Isaac. When a father is delinquent or when a father is not around, then the chiyuv doesn't fall on the mother, but rather then the bezdin is obligated to circumcise a child. And this pasuk is referencing bezdin. When a bezdin is not involved, then when he becomes ben yud gimel shem yom echad, he has to circumcise himself or make sure he gets circumcised. Big machlokas Rambam Ravid. When do we say that there's a machlokas Karesh? Is it every day? Is it only at the end of life? Fine, big discussions. This also comes up a lot when I do a circumcision and the father's a goy. So where do I get rishus from to do the bris? It's not my kid. And the answer is that I function as bezdin. Or let's say another case scenario, which happened a number of times, where a woman gets pregnant. Forget about the father being a goy, sperm donor. Right, so no Maseches, no father. There's a father genetically, but maybe not halachically. Okay, so all of these cases, the only reason I'm allowed to do that is because in theory, I'm like at an appointment of bezdin, and therefore that works. How do we know that a woman is not obligated to perform the commandment of circumcision for her child? We know that Tzipora did this, and maybe Ladina, it's mutter. By the way, just follow up on a previous story that just came up based on this line that Tzipora did the bris, it was still kosher. I told you the story about the Christian family last week who then told me afterwards that they were Jewish. My first cousin, Rabbi Isaac Rice, is a chashuv Talmud Chacham, a young, brilliant chashuv Talmud Chacham in New York. He's very close with the Herschel Schechter, and he said to Herschel Schechter, my cousin's a Moel in Chicago. This case happened. The family presented as Christian, and the shaila was, should he go back and do a tafas tam bris? So when you have all of Shas and Poskim at your fingertips, the life is a wonderful place. Herschel Schechter said it doesn't matter, because even if you do a bris shelo lishma, ladina, technically you're yotze the bris. Now, my intent during that circumcision was zippo, nothing. Family's Christians, no medical, no halachic anything. Didn't cross my mind for a moment. In my head, pure goy, my whole mindset, no brachos, no matzitza, nothing. No talis, no cup of wine, zero. Rav Herschel Schechter said that baby, if in fact he's a yid, his bris is kosher ladina, you don't have to do a tavas tam bris, which is wild. My brain was completely not.
Then Rabbi Reese says.
Rabbi Reese took a totally different angle. He angled and said that she has no ne'emanos. That's true.
Yeah.
So maybe they argue. I don't know. Didn't ask.
Yeah.
That's a crazy shit.
Did you want to become shomer?
This family, this couple.
Yeah, the kid did somehow. According to Rabbi Reese, then he would need the Hatavas Tambris. According to Rav Shachar, he wouldn't, right?
How did they sort
I don't know, it might be two different conversations.
I think they are two different conversations.
How
Also.
did they sort of?
I didn't ask Rabbi Reese, is the bris kosher ladina? He just said she has no ne'emanos. He was talking about the ne'emanos piece. Sorry, Dad.
How did they certify that the mother was Jewish?
That was Rabbi Reese's problem. Rabbi Reese said she is a religious Christian, and now that she's saying that she's Jewish, she has no ne'emanos. She has zero trustworthiness. And guess what? The kid genetically is probably Jewish, but Rabbi Reese said it doesn't matter. She has lost her right to speak as it relates to halachic terminology. She's out. She's a goner. She can't say I'm Jewish. It doesn't matter what she says. And Rav Herschel Schechter was saying he didn't even touch that piece, but Lemaisa, the bris is kosher. Even if you'd say that she is or isn't trustworthy, but the bris would still be kosher, because even though my intent was flatline, nothing, I know nothing, doesn't matter. So a woman for sure can do a bris, it should still be kosher ladina, but why isn't it her chiyuv? That's our Gemara's question. First of the long lines. The Gemara says on the second of the long, says the Gemara, Ashkechan miyad. At least we know, says Rashi, a third of the way down, Ashkechan miyad le'Avram ne'emar kain. We know that the mitzvah applies to Avraham, but the pasuk only says Vayamal Avraham it's Yitzchak beno. Who says that I have to be mal my son? Mehechatesi. The Gemara says Ladoros minal. And how do we know that it applies to the future? Because the pasuk says Kasher tziva oso Elokim, and Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel Kamakom Shneimar Tzav. Whenever it says Tzav, and here we have tziva oso Elokim, Eino Ella Ziruz Miyad Uladoros. It's a trifecta of what the word actually comes to teach us. The word Tzav teaches us three things. It teaches us the din of Zrizis, we should do brisim in the morning as opposed to the afternoon. It teaches us Miyad, that it applies immediately, or in this case for Abraham, and it also applies Ladoros, trifecta with one word. The word Tzav, when that word is used, the Chachamim understand that word as a triple-headed monster to teach us that it applies now and in the future as well. Zirus dechsiv v'tzabes Yehoshua v'chazikeu v'hamitzeh. We learn that from Sefer Yehoshua that tzav is connected to Zrizus. Yadu l'doroch dechsiv min hayom asher tziva Hashem v'hala l'dorosechem. Beautiful. So says the Balei Tosfos, the second Tosfos on the bottom. We said oso v'lo osa. And asks the Gemara, I don't understand. V'im tomar that we should say the drasha of oso v'lo osa, that the reason we know that a woman is exempt from the mitzvah of bris milah is because of the drasha. That's not correct. Lama likra tepu klei the mitzvah saseh shazman gramahu shanim al bishmini l'leidaso v'noshim peturos. Why did you bring me a pasuk of oso v'lo osa? After all, bris milah is a mitzvah saseh shazman grama like any other mitzvah. So Balei Tosfos answer v'yesh lomar kevan demiyom hashmini b'hala ein la hefsek. Because day 8 and onward, there is no break in the chiyuv of bris milah. So therefore, ein la hefsek lav zman gramahu. Wow, the parameters of zman grama are gone because the mitzvah applies from day 8 until the person dies. What's our next immediate kasha? What about nighttime? That's what Tosfos says now. V'im tomar akati mitzvah saseh shazman gramahu to ein malan ela b'yom k'deisa b'perek ha'arel. The halacha is that if you do a bris at night, quoted in the Ramah and Shulchan Aruch, it's a 0. The Balei Tosfos Omer, based on a Gemara in Yevamos, v'yesh lamar to asya kiman de amar hasam demila shelo bezmana noheges bein b'yom bein b'layla. Wow, crazy shita. This did not make it into the Shulchan Aruch. This shita of the Balei Tosfos, because the Ramah does not paskin like this. But the Gemara over here says the Balei Tosfos say that if a person is shelo bezmana, you're past day 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, 50 years old, whatever, then you no longer have a chiyuv of bayom. Then it can be even at night, which is a huge chiddush, and actually widens a lot of kulas. Let's say, especially in the winter months. This happened to me once when I did a bris, and right across the, literally right across the border going east, and we scheduled a bris at like 8. But like the sun, it was like at the dead of the winter, and there 8 o'clock the sun hadn't risen. By us, sunrise was like 7:06, whatever it was. We had to wait 10 minutes to do the bris. The bris was bismana, so they wouldn't have had this tosfos anyways. But l'maisa, we don't paskin like this. But a fascinating tosfos nevertheless. Let's move on to the next mitzvah, the mitzvah of pidyon haben, 10 lines from the bottom of the page, Chav Testament Aleph. Minal, and how do we know there's a mitzvah to be podeh a bechor? That if a child is the firstborn child, we'll see if it's to a woman or to a man, that we have to be podeh that child in the whole process with Kohen Tichsiv called Bechor Banecha Tifteh. When the father doesn't do his job, the son has to do it himself. We have a double language, and if the father doesn't do it, the son must. How do we know that if a father doesn't do it, that a woman has no chiyuv to perform the mitzvah of pidyon haben, that we could learn the pasuk tipadeh from the word tifteh. And here's the drush on this pasuk: Kol shemitzuva lifdos es atzmo. Anyone who has a chiyuv for themselves to have a redemption, which is a man, mitzuva lifdos es acherim. Then therefore the father, for example, would be able to be podeh others. V'chol she'einu mitzuva lifdos es atzmo. Someone who doesn't have a chiyuv to be podeh themselves, namely a woman, then einu mitzuva lifdos acherim. We pass in this way in Shulchan Aruch as well. V'ihi. How do we know that a woman minalan d'lo mechayv l'mifrak nafsha? How do we know that a woman is not obligated to redeem herself? Says the Gemara, another way to analyze the pasuk, Kol shecher mitzvah lifdoso, only if others will be able to redeem you, then mitzvah lifdoso as atzmo. But a woman is not like that. So a woman never has anyone who's obligated to redeem them if they're the firstborn. Ein mitzvah lifdos as atzmo. Asks the Gemara, how do we know that no one is obligated to redeem a woman if she's a bechora? Says the Gemara, so these are some of the basic halachos of pidyon haben. And now we're going to cross-pollinate with some questions over here. Tana Rabbanan, who liftos uvno liftos? Let's say that I show up at a bris. The father says to me, oh, my son is a firstborn, and so am I. My son had a pidyon haben, but I did not. So after doing all the analysis, if you find out that the parameters are correct, now they both have a mitzvah pidyon haben, and let's say that it's the appropriate day. Now it's not at the bris. Now we're day 31, whatever it is. So then the Gemara says, who kodem livno? The father has to have a pidyon before the son. Father goes first. It's not our instinct. We're doting parents. We typically like to take care of our kids first. It's put on your own mask before you help others, which no parent would ever do in a billion years on an airplane. Never. I think about this all the time. I fly a lot. I roll my eyes every time. I'm like, not a chance. Who would do that? You'd always put on your kids' masks first. You wouldn't even think twice about it. Here, the Gemara says that you have to take care of yourself first. By the way, halachically, you might be wrong. It's chayecha kodben l'chayecha bercha.
That's the reason behind this.
100%. It may also be true by the masks. I'm just saying. I'm just saying in my bones, it doesn't. No, yeah, it's a gzeira she'ef shar lamod bo. Rabbi Yehuda Omer beno kodmo. Actually, the son goes first. Why is that? Shezeh mitzvaso al avi v'zeh mitzvas beno alav. This is fascinating. The fact that I, as an adult, should have a pidyon is not my job. It's my father's job. No, I'm not the bechor, but assuming that I was, it'd be my father's job. But the fact that my son needs a pidyon is my job. So therefore, if it's me or my child, I have to do my child because my chiyuv is, I have the chiyuv to perform the mitzvah for my child. The fact that I need one is my father's fault. So therefore, I go to get to machlokas in the Tanaim. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, turning to the top of Chavtes Malva, Kol Modim, everyone agrees. Nobody argues that when there are only 5 coins to do the mitzvah pidyon haben, as we know, there's 5 silver coins. It's pretty expensive actually. The 5 coins are like, they're probably, you have to do the ounces in actual dollars. I think it's pretty expensive. Last time I checked, it was like $118 for the 5 coins, whatever it is. It's pretty pricey. Yeah, you can look it up. You just have to look up the weight of silver, the cost of silver per ounce. It's pretty straightforward, but I never look it up. I have the coins somewhere in my house. I have to find them. Okay. Anyways, my timer. Why is it that we say that if there's only 5 coins to go around, then the father for sure goes first? Because mitzvah de gufe adifa. Okay, now we have some lumdus. We have a comparison of mitzvah de gufe, a mitzvah that's happening with my body, against the fact that I have a mitzvah ala ben. I have a mitzvah to be podem my son. And I also, in my father's neglect, also have a commandment to be podem myself. So says the Gemara, mitzvah de gufe adifa. Fascinating. Why is that true? Why would we say mitzvah de gufe is adifa if the classical tzivui isn't for me to take care of myself? The tzivui is me to take care of my son. So, okay, not for now. But kipligi, where do we have this machlokas? It applies when 5 coins do exist, but only in properties with liens, and 5 coins are free dollars. Rabbi Yehuda savar malve. If there's a halva, that's a halachic halva, so then that money, it's as if it's in a star. Bahani chamesh parik libre, with the 5 coins that are free, we redeem the son. And the coin can go to the properties that have a lien and go take 5 sela worth in order to do the pidyon haben on the father. The Rabbanan Sabre, 8 lines down on Chavtes Mebez, we'll be going to the top of Lamed and Aleph. Rabbanan Sabre milva dekaso dechsiv beoraisa lav kiksuva b'shtar damya v'hilkach mitzvah degufa adif. According to the Chachamim, because money that's locked up in a star is not the oraisa, the transaction may be the oraisa, but we don't look at that money as reachable. So therefore, says the Gemara, we fall back on the basics of mitzvah degufa adif machlokas tamen. Tanu Rabbanan, another application, this time not internal, but from the world of Pidyon Haben to outside the world of Pidyon Haben. Lifto says beno, v'lalos l'regel. How do we pick which one? So the answer is podes beno v'achar kach olo l'regel. The son comes first. If you still have enough money to do aliyah l'regel, fine. But obviously, we're not talking about a vev shalakayim shneim. We have to pick one. So the din is you have to be podes beno. That's the Tanakam. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ola l'regel v'achar kach podes beno shezo mitzvah overes v'zo mitzvah she'eno overes. That's not fair. The mitzvah of aliyah l'regel is right now. It's today, and in a week from now, it's not going to be either. My son's chiyuv for Pidyon Haben is going to exist his whole entire life. So therefore, when I'm putting up against one another, the world of Pidyon Haben and the world of aliyah l'regel comes first. So it says the Gemara, Bishlam ala Rabbi Yehuda. I understand according to Rabbi Yehuda why he said what he said to Kiddush Taima, because he said zu mitzvah vers zu mitzvah shelo vers sheno vers, and that's why he said that ola l'regel comes first. Ela Rabbanan my ta'amayu. Why is it that they hold that the Pidyon Haben should come first? This is based on the flow of psukim, a beautiful drasha. First, the pasuk speaks about kol b'chor banecha tifte, that you should do a redemption, and later in the pasuk it says lo yirupanei rekam, that you should not see my face. So therefore, it says the Gemara, based on the flow of the psukim, the pidyon comes first before the aliyah l'regel. Says the Gemara, a third of the way down. Let's say that a man has 5 wives, and he has 1 boy with each wife, first children, no miscarriages, and all of them are from different wives. So they're all firstborn children. First of all, what happens with his Yerusha, by the way? Is that never thought about that. I mean, they're divided.
Whoever's oldest.
Why? 2x.
States it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaning they're both firstborns to their mothers.
Oh, that's the sugya. Oh, I didn't know that.
Older of the
You're saying that I should know Chumash better. That's what you're trying to say. I like that. Subtle. Yeah. I probably should listen to Laning now that I'm being slugged up on camera here, David. I have a tour. So this is the Gemara says, what is a case? Yeah, it's from Batolo, as one of my friends used to call it. Yeah. It says the Gemara, if this is the case, Shechayev liftos kulan. Talmud kol b'chor banecha tifte. Says the Gemara because it says every b'chor. Ask the Gemara pshita b'peta rechem tala rachmana. We know that it's based on the woman. We know that it's based on the peta rechem, that which opens the womb, the first child born from a uterus. That's why Ladina, if a child is old enough to be considered a fetus and a woman miscarries, rachmana litzlan, then nothing. That's it. Then the deal is that she's no longer shaykh. The next child, who is a boy, who's born healthy, then there's no din of pidyon ben, because that's not peta rechem. So says the Gemara, what are you giving me a pasuk for? We know that it's based on peta rechem. We know that it's based on the first child that exits the womb. Says the Gemara, third of the way down, because it's possible we had a havamina to say that we have a gzera shela from the world of nachala, from inheritance. Just like by bechor, we learn based on the firstborn of the father, not the mother. So avkan, maybe we'd say reshis ono kamash malan. No, over here it is based on peta rechem, and it's not based on anything else. Halfway down the lamdo Torah, if the father is neglectful and doesn't teach his son Torah, he's obligated to teach himself. How do we know that a woman is not obligated to teach her son? Remember, not that she's not obligated. We'll discuss that in a minute. But here we're talking about the chiyuv toward a child. How do we know that a woman is not chayav to teach her son? I can make a funky drasha with the words. It says the Gemara, kol shem mitzuva lilmod mitzuva lelamed. Anyone who has an obligation to learn themselves has an obligation to teach her son. The kol she'enu mitzvah lilmod, the kol she'enu mitzuva lilmod, enu mitzuva lelamed. Good. So therefore, she has no mitzvah to teach her child. But let's ask on that. How do we know that a woman doesn't have stama mitzvah Talmud Torah? Another funky reading of the psukim. One that another person is obligated to teach them, but that's not a woman. Mitzvah then she herself has to teach herself. But if there is a person out there, in this case a woman, who doesn't have a chiyuv for others to teach her, she doesn't have an obligation to teach herself. Let's just be super clear here. I know there's like big discussions about can women learn Gemara. I got it. But what's definitely not part of this discussion is a woman's obligation to know halacha. That's pashut, ABCs, nothing to talk about. A woman has to know Shulchan Aruch the same way that a man does. The same way. They have to keep the same dalet chelkei Shulchan Aruch. There are some halachos that are specific to women that we know nothing about, and there are some that are okay. They can skip the ones that are specific to men. Great. They have to know hilchos nida cold. They have to know basar b'chalav cold. Hilchos ta'arovos like the back of their hand. They have to run the kitchen perfectly. You can complain all day. I understand. I get it. I understand. Yeah, Gemara, whatever. But that's a big machlokes. Fine. But no one is pater from Shulchan Aruch. No one. Everyone's obligated to know Shulchan Aruch backwards and forwards. So it says the Gemara, how do we know that no one is obligated to teach a woman Torah? Therefore, we know that a woman is not obligated in the general sitting, what we're doing, sitting and learning Torah, Shabbat Peh, that a woman is not obligated in. Tanu Rabbanan, 3 lines into the wide lines, 2/3 of the way down, Chav Tes Mebez, the Gemara says, Hu lilmod uv'no lilmod. Let's say that my father wants to go sit and learn and fund himself, or he wants to send me to go sit and learn, and I will live on his dime. Open to the opportunity if you're willing to discuss it, by the way. Says the Gemara, who kodem livno? It's that the father gets to sit in the base medrash before the son does. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, well, it depends. If the child is he has alacrity, he has excitement, he's talented, the Talmud miskayim biyadu, he remembers things, then beno kodmo. But otherwise not. So if the father is a mutzlach and the son is not a mutzlach, then the father should sit and learn. He said it depends, right? In the previous answer, it didn't depend. Father goes first. Here it depends on the child. Rav Yaakov, Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rav Yaakov, who was the son of Rav Acha bar Yaakov, so the grandson and the grandchild had the same name. Shadre avu alakame de Abai. He sent. His father sent him to go learn by Abai. Ki asa, when Rav Yaakov came back, Chazye, Rav Acha saw Delo Hava Mechadadan Shmaitse, that he wasn't holding very clearly in sugyas. Let's just be clear who we're talking about over here. Their version of not holding in sugyas is our version of massive Talmud Chacham. But we just have to call it like it is. These people were on such high levels, it's hard for us to fathom. But in this particular case, the Lo Hava Mechadadan Shmaitse, he didn't know by heart. Amalei, the father said to the son, Ana adifna minach. I should have sent myself. I'm better than you are. Tov at de ezel ana. You sit over here and back in town. I'm going to go learn in the base medrash. So this is now Rav Acha bar Yaakov, the great Amora, who's now going to go learn by Abaye. Shama Abaye to Kava Asi. He now heard that the father of Rav Yaakov, Rav Acha Bereder of Yaakov, was coming to the base medrash. And Havahu Mazik Be Rabbanan de Abaye. There was a particular shade, a demon, that would frequent the base medrash of Abaye. The Meforshim point out that Abaye's base medrash was at the outskirts of town, which is a common place for demons to be. Tichihavu Aile betrain. And that this mazik, this shade was so dangerous, even when two people were together, which normally was an override for a shade. Afilu b'yamama, even during the day, this was a very, very strong shade. Havu mitziki, he would damage people. So Abaye had a great idea. Instead of throwing out the welcome carpet, Amar lahu lo leisev le inish ushpiza. No one should invite him as a guest, because Efshar, with his greatness, that Rav Acha bar Yaakov could get rid of this shade. Efshar demisrachish nisa, perhaps a miracle will happen. He went into the base medrash and bas be'ahu be rabbanon. He ended up sleeping in shul on the hard benches. What was he supposed to do? Nobody invited him. Not a very warm town. Idmi le kitanina deshiva reish vasa. And when he finally went to sleep that night, this demon showed up like a 7-headed monster. Kol kriya dekara nasar chad reishe. Every time that Rav Acha bar Yaakov bowed, one of the heads of the 7-headed monster fell off, and in the end he won. Amar lehu lemachar, he said to everyone in the base medrash the next day, Ilo israchish nisa sakintin. Had it not been that a miracle took place, and that was what helped to destroy this demon, I would have been put in danger. Now, the story itself is worth research, but more importantly for our part of the Gemara, we do see a scenario that where the son is slacking, the father should be the one who then takes the benefit of the money. That's in line with the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, who wanted to say it depends on what's going on. It's not categorical that it's always the father. It just depends if the kid's a mutzlach or not. Tanu Rabbanan, Lilmo Torah Velisa Isha. Let's say we're putting up two things against one another, the mitzvah of Talmud Torah or to marry a woman. Yilmo Torah v'achar kach yisa isha. First, the person should learn Torah, and afterwards he should get married. Imefshar lo below isha. If he's not able to be without a woman, then yisa isha v'achar kach yilmo Torah. If it's too hard for him to be single, then he should get married first so he can learn more benachas. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Halacha no seisha ve'achar kach yilmo Torah. He says the halacha is that first a man should get married and afterwards he should learn Torah. Rav Yochanan Amar rechaim b'tzavaro v'yasok b'Torah. He's got the mills hanging on his neck, meaning he has work responsibilities. Once he's married, he has to support his wife. How can he do that? How can he even accomplish that? It's crazy. Says the Gemara, v'lo pligi halan v'halahu. It depends what city you're talking about. One city's talking about Bavel. One city's talking about Eretz Yisrael. Take a look at Rashi. Beautiful Rashis, one after the next. Says Rashi, 9 lines or so from the bottom, Dibur Hamaskil, Halan v'halahu b'nei Bavel, hayu holchin v'gorsin mishnayos hatanoim be'eretz Yisrael. The Bnei Bavel, they took a trip to Eretz Yisrael. And since they weren't living at home, they were traveling, they were staying in a hostel. Therefore, no seisha. To who below here, the hava below here, that way he'll have fewer here. He should get married first, leave town, and then he'll be fine. And the next Rashi says, Halahu livnei Eretz Yisrael halamdim b'makom, and they're living in the place where the Tanaim were. And therefore, therefore, we were concerned that in Eretz Yisrael that she should not get married first, because if he does get married, he should not get married first, because if he does, he's not traveling, he's going to be home, and then he has the tzarchei abayis upon him. Therefore, halan halahu, that's the distinction the Gemara makes. The Gemara tells a story 10 lines from the bottom of the page on Chav Tes Beis Mishtabech le Rav Chizda le Rav Huna b'Rav Hamnuna. Rav Chizda was telling Rav Huna there's some praiseworthy words about Rav Hamnuna da Adam Gadol. When he shows up to you, have you liyadi? I'd love to meet him, says Rav Chizda. When he got there, he saw that he was not wearing a head wrap, which was common to be worn at that time. Why aren't you wearing a sidra? I'm not married. And apparently we wear talesim. This is also a discussion of poskim. Why do we only wear talesim when we're married, which is the common practice? L'chora, it's really not the din. It's really not so simple that that's the case. I know. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sfardim do it right. But l'chora, even by I'm just saying, I know Rav Shechter has a psak like this also, that it's reasonable for people to wear talis. You shouldn't change your family minhag with no good reason, but really everyone should be wearing a talis single and out. Yeah, but we've created a real custom out of this, and it's from what I've been hearing, there aren't a lot of sources to strongly back it up. Okay, he says the man says he's not married. So then Rav Chizda turned away. Turned his face away. Make sure that it's the case that I don't see you la'api in my face. Go get married. Rav Huna l'taime. Why did Rav Huna say that? Because the Amar ben Esrim shanav lo nasa isha kol yom be'aver. That if a person turns 20 years old and he hasn't gotten married yet, all of his days will be filled with averes. He's going to be doing inappropriate things with women. Says the Gemara, be'aver sal kadaitach. You think he's going to be doing averes all day? That's not true. Elaima kol yom behir hor avera. You're right. He may not be doing things necessarily bigufo, but he'll have hirhur. That's until he's 20. Up until 20, Hashem waits. When will he get married? Once he gets to 20 years old, below nasa, most of his bones should swell. We've had this in Shas before. Basically, it is that Hashem is upset and wants us to be married by the time we're 20. Rav Chizda said, I'm better than my friends because I got married at 16. And then he says, "We have an sivna ba'ar beisar." Had it only been that I would have gotten married at 14, top of Lamed Aben Aleph, Abamina l'satan, I would have said to the Satan, "Gira be'einayich, I just shot an arrow through your eye. Nice try. I'm okay. You can't get me anymore." Amalei Rav Nasan bar Ami adidach al tzavari devarecha. He says, "Mishisar ve'ad esrim v'tarte." He says, when you're able to have an influence over your child, when is this? That is going to debrich. Excuse me. Let me read that again. Adidach al savari debrich. When you're able to have control over your brich, over your child, that's from 16 to 22. I have to say, as a father of children in that age bracket, something has happened. This is not the age bracket of control. 16 to 22 is where everything falls off the rails. That's what I'm understanding so far. I love my children. I love you. So that's what the Gemara says. Some say no, it's mitam neisrei from 18 ad esrim v'arba. We would have all argued that we have somewhat, maybe a little control between the ages of birth and like 8, maybe 12, maybe koshira. It's nisht pasha. Kitanoi. This is based on a machlokes tanaim, based on a well-known pasuk Chanochlan al Pidarko. Rabbi Yehuda Reb Nechemia Chadam Mishis Sar ve'ad Esrim v'Tartain. That the din of Chanochlan al Pidarko, the application of it applies during those years of 16 to 22. The other one says v'Chadam Mitam Neisrei ve'ad Esrim ve'Arba. Some say it's from 18 to 24. We'll stop right here and pick up on the next section of our Mishnah on Lamed Amud Aleph tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.